you so much for talking to us. It's absolutely brilliant to be back in a physical exhibition environment after over a year now, right? So these are 4 galleries that are collaborating, and they're here in New Delhi in this beautiful Bikaner House. What's really going on? How did it start? And there seems to be 2 separate sections. So just talk a little bit about how this is laid and put together.
So it has been a strange year. It's a year of cancellations, and these 4 galleries came together to celebrate that there is some coming together now, and we're at a point we all know how to keep safe protocols, so they put the effort in to put forward an in-person exhibition at Bikaner House in Delhi, and we're calling it on site because we really want to celebrate the fact that it's here. And as we know, seeing art on a screen, which we've all been trying to do for the last year, it's just not the same. So this is a celebration of being together safely at a distance, but being together and really just enjoying a gorgeous exhibition.
Shri, thank you so much for talking to us and also giving us the walkthrough of the space that you have created. And this work of Harsha, it just almost seems to be the introductory sort of sculpture, not just for what Chemould is bringing, but pretty much for the entire space. So I'd love for you to talk about this work and its practice actually.
The ladder idea came about when Harsha was at a hardware store looking for, there was somebody else looking for ladders. There was a man, and he said, I want the right ladder, and I don't want it Sida ladder, and so kept looking for the right straight ladder.
Right.
And kind of that was the beginning, the germination for Harsha of doing this ladder with a slight bend. What the ladder became a kind of metaphor of the not so straight path. The moment you have something set, you're climbing up, and suddenly there's a detour, there's another route.
And so quite telling of the times probably that we're in.
In terms of the ladder and its kind of monumentality, it's very slender monumentality. It's very kind of holding minimal space. Ladder being sort of straight line, cross line. So he's also playing with the idea of minimalism in terms of holding a maximum space.
And so the color gold.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about Reena Kalat. Reena's done, Reena is always map making. So this map that she's done, which is a quite precise map, but it's a south up map. You're always used to seeing a map with a big sort of North America straight on, and then everything else sort of following down. So in this map here, suddenly you feel it's upside down, but actually it's not. It's just a south up map.
It's a south up map,
yeah.
Exactly.
The stamps, the rubber stamps that she's put, are of those that have been denied visas across nations. So, rubber stamp meaning bureaucracy. Rubber stamp is very much her medium as well.
Yes.
You can see this wire here, which she also uses. She's combined her own language of the rubber stamp and the barbed wire, and created this sort of dialogue of both. One is giving precedence to the rest of the world as not just North and South North America, but also the fact that it's also contentious borders.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about? And then you want to also talk about these absolutely gorgeous works by Anju Dodia.
So Anju Dodia's work is always about self-reflection. It's usually the self-portrait. You can see in this work called The Target, where self-reflection becomes also the angst of daily practice. How you come to work every morning, approach your work, and she sort of stuck pencils into her. They're not sharp arrows, but pencil being the tool. So the tool is often that kind of cause for anxiety. How do you approach your work? How do you come? Each morning, that sort of fear in a sense.
Absolutely.
Of being able to confront your canvas.
And this room is dedicated to Michu Sen.
Yeah. So in a way, this work is designed for the Bikaner House, this very space. She did 26 drawings,
wow.
and they're called happy prick drawings, where she's pricked onto paper, creating these sort of happy works. So through the pandemic, Me Too was very unable. She is an artist who carries the weight of of what was happening. She was unable to really work. So when this opportunity came, she's like, I said, let's break through this sort of angst. She said, what should I do? I said, please make happy paintings. Which is ironic in a way in this time to say that, or especially with an artist who's gone through this extreme, she's borne the brunt of everybody else's, she takes it personally. So, but it's playing with that sort of irony, and if you look here, it's a declaration where she says, I, Me Too Sen, hereby declare that given the current unprecedented climate as an artist, I'm socially distancing myself from all unhappy, dark, negative images by strictly following the yes-no list below. And basically presenting uncolored, uncontroversial, suffering, virtuous, happy prick drawings. So she's sort of playing with the idea of this kind of, art should be happy. Of course, it's totally ironic.
It is ironic, but also the idea of pricking is based in pain, is based in either a medical process.
Yeah, but it's also it's compulsive. When you're pricking, it's like there's this kind
meditative.
of yeah.
And her work almost always very satirical, especially performative works, etc. Also, so I think this is also playing on the two sides of the time.
Yes.
So the work is expected to sort of remain as it is together, or the works can individually.
They can be individually. Of course, there's some people who've taken a whole bunch together. So there's a sort of invisibility to them, so it works when it's nicely
when it's sort of together, the story is complete.
I'm part of Vadehra Art Gallery. So the presentation that we have here on site is 4 artists, 2 senior artists, Arpita Singh and Doshi, and 2 contemporary artists, Atul Dodia and Shilpa Gupta. And the room that we're standing in at the moment is a presentation by Shilpa Gupta. And this series of hers is titled 6,10.3,2. 6 is for the 6 feet of social distancing that we're expected to keep at this time. 10.3 is that distance in the span of her hand, and 2 meters is the same distance in meters. So this entire body of work was actually created by Shilpa during lockdown. So it of course reflects various ideas about confinement and mobility. For example, we have this work over here where you see a knife rotating. And it means to signify that the frenzy of being in a confined space. It's meant to sort of show that. So we're standing here amidst these beautiful new works by architect Doshi. Doshi is the only Indian architect to have ever received the Pritzker Prize, which is like the Nobel Prize of architecture. He's a very, very senior and well-respected architect in India, and he's been practicing art for many years as well. In this particular work, he's actually taken one inspiration from one of his drawings, and then he's turned it into this beautiful sculpture made of steel. So he's sort of taking the idea of a very flat functional drawing and then turning it on its head and making it this beautiful abstract object, which has this lovely shadow falling across it. These are all works that he has actually done during lockdown. So he's been very, very prolific over the past few months. This is a recent series of paintings that Doshi has done. His earlier paintings took a lot of inspiration from miniatures. He's always been inspired by miniatures because he felt that a miniature can depict so much and such a story in such a small space. And so his earlier paintings actually had plans laid out in the miniature format, and now this sort of takes away from that and makes it much more abstract. So these works are more about the planes and the color
They're almost surrealist in nature, dreamlike. And he has such lovely stories about these works. He said that the darkness in the work reminds him of his ancestral home, his grandfather's home. And the brightness reminds him of the textiles that are flying about everywhere in his hometown, So that dichotomy is something that he wanted to sort of present, and he found very interesting to show over here. Again, that's another one of his drawing works. It's on canvas, and again, sort of taking a very surrealistic approach to drawing a plan of a city or a building. Whereas on one hand, he of course works with very precise plans to make buildings, and on the other hand, in this medium, he works to make buildings that will probably never get made, because they're impossible. They're all dreamlike, surrealist. So that's the idea.
So what's also interesting is that you are bringing your artists and giving them separate spaces, pretty much like what Chemould is presenting. Yes. There are separate spaces and rooms for each artist. So, how have you thought about that versus sort of bringing artists together and building conversations?
So in this case, because each artist gave us such a significant body of work, it only made sense to put them into separate spaces. Because even this Alubury series, it's a series that was made in 2018 and shown in Paris at that time. And in this series, he's sort of talking about this singular figure, whether it be Shabri from Ramayana, or Krishna from Mahabharata, or the Roman Catholic martyr Saint Sebastian. He's sort of, looking at this very, very solitary figure and showing it through the various frames of the paintings. And this is, again, what is amazing about Atul is how every series of his is so different from the other. And the way that he uses the material so beautifully is, amazing in these works. It's the way he's used the oil paint, the putty, the layering is what's really stands out here.
Absolutely.
Here we have a new series of works by artist Arpita Singh. The presentation here, the title of the presentation is Homeworld, which is based on this painting that we see over here. And there's actually a very interesting story. Arpita ji was looking at viewing a documentary on Palestinian refugees some months ago. And they interviewed some children who were asked, what would you like for New Year's? And they all said that we would like to go home. So, she took from that idea, and that's why you see the repetition of I want to go back homeward, and then, the boat. So this kind of motive and these kind of, layered texts have appeared for many, many years in Arpita's works, and they are really, come up really beautifully here. And also, I think the last few months has given her and everybody a chance to really focus on what it means to be home and what it means to be, across borders and confined to spaces. So all of those ideas are sort of reflected across these watercolors and paintings.
So what year are these works from?
Most of these works are 2020.
Wow.
They're a very recent body of works. There are probably three works here that are older works. So most of this has been done during lockdown.
What's interesting, the idea of home and displacement was as fresh and recent, 50, 80 years back as it is now.
Absolutely.
So it's an international global.
It's amazing, because Arpita ji also, I think, went through that time of partition and all of
Exactly.
that. And so through her work, she has spoken about that and about the condition of women because of being displaced. And so it's just like the theme is continuing through the work, because that theme is really continuing
in
through
our
time, in our lives, So that is quite, it is. I think dreamlike is something that I would call it. It's almost like in the morning when you wake up and you've seen a dream and you don't quite remember what it is, but it leaves a feeling behind. I think a lot of the paintings do that.
So, pretty very excited to see the space that Experimenter has created as always. So how many artists are you bringing here? There seems to be one single curatorial thematic that's really binding this space together within the whole context of this larger show.
Yeah.
So would love to hear more about what's going on.
Right. So very exciting to bring this project to Delhi from Calcutta. this part of the exhibition is called "Do You Know How to Start a Fire?" To light a fire, and it begins from a conversation between a publisher, Naveen Kishore, and the past artist Vadehra, and he asks her in the conversation, "Do you know how to light a fire?" And she says yes. And then she asks, "Do you know how to put out?" She says yes, but only a small. I'm going to put it back into where this whole conversation starts from. Vadehra, whose work is behind me here, is an artist who's born in 1926. She passed away in 2009. She's an incredible artist with a beautiful sense of material, and she's also very, very. You can see the kind of anguish and the strength of the form coming through. But the whole exhibition is based on solitary studio practices, where artists are immersed in their own studios, and new ideas or new thoughts come there, and that becomes the starting point. So, do you know how to start a fire? The conversation started from there. But alongside Vadehra's work, we've juxtaposed the work of Aisha Sultana, who's obviously much younger than Vadehra, a living artist. This work was made 60 years after this work was made, and then that kind of a conversation is important because what both these artists are doing is actually giving us a point of view, a gaze. That's the gaze that we're looking at. So Vadehra is looking at humans mostly, people around her, and kind of obliquely looking at these people. And at the same time, Aisha is looking at landscape and completely in a different language. So it was important for us to bring two generations of artists in this conversation together.
What's interesting is the way you're bringing these two very different practices together. It's an interesting curatorial layer to it.
Yes.
My question is, would the artists, one of them's not no
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
how would they react to see this being woven out of their work?
It's a very interesting question. Now, I think the objective of putting them together is to provide the viewer a different way of looking at things, and how art can transcend time beyond what it was made for. These works were probably made, this is made in the I think late 80s, and this was made right now 40 years after it was made. The visual construct of it is incredible because you can see the visual connection happening straight away. But the
conceptual
reference,
yes,
they come from totally two different points of view. But it is for us to spark a conversation, and from that sparking of a conversation is where maybe the idea of how to light a fire starts, and this combination of those two people come together. There is a possibility of looking at it in different light, both her practicing her light and her practice in this light. But how would they react to it now? I can't say about Vadehra because
yes.
she is not there. Let us know.
But is
Aisha is extremely excited because she was not aware of her practice at all, and for viewers to see it also completely. And Vadehra's work has not been seen for decades. She's highly underrepresented, highly underseen.
It's like a discovery of sorts.
It's a discovery of sorts. But why not discover it in a new way? And instead of making it kind of historical, important in the historical narrative, and to kind of build a new conversation around it.
So are these expected to sort of remain together the way you present?
We would love for it to remain together, and one of them are going to remain together.
Fantastic.
But then again, once someone has it, I think
it's entirely up to them as to
how to.
They may start a new fire.
New fire as well altogether.
Fantastic.
যদি তোমায় বলি এত কিছু এই সব কিছু হয় আমরা ভালো আছি ভালো থাকো
So would you like to talk a little about Prabhakar's practice and what is showing here?
Of course. So Prabhakar has been now following the landscape of mining and the post-industrial landscape now for many years, and questioning ideas of labor, politics, of the politics of using resources, the conditions of miners and farmers, and this entire conversation is really based on this new body of work that he's making that are oils on paper, beautiful, delicate little bodies of work that he's talking about these characters that keep coming back into his paintings and drawings and large scale murals, and they embody a certain kind of characters.
Space in this exhibition on site. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you were showing here.
Yeah, so I'm Shivangi. I work as a curator at Chemould, and so we're calling this exhibition The Entanglement, and we're showing 3 artists, Vadehra, Art, and Tanya Puel. The way we kind of brought this exhibition together was we're looking at 3 women artists that are thinking about abstraction and they're thinking about material exploration. And that was our point of reference behind us.
Why are you dividing women artists and men artists?
I don't think it was a conscious decision to divide the women and the men artists. It kind of started with Morte's works, and with that we saw more Tanya's works, and like bringing in artists that are kind of exploring material and really pushing the boundaries on that. And taking, it's a lot also about abstraction. All 3 of them have chosen their materials, and their materials are more defining their practice than any literary story behind them.
Sure, and this is a very large work of Bikaner.
Exactly. So Bharti, as we all know, is known for her Bindi works. We have 4 of them here. This is a work from 2008. It's quite interesting to even see, like the development. This is like a much older work to the ones that we have than the other ones. Bindi, obviously, as we all know, references a lot of things in India, but for Bharti it's more than that. It's about the human, the relationship of the human body to the cosmos, and the Bindi represents that for her. It is also a language for her. She's created this whole language where she's exploring the Bindi not only just for its literal meaning but also as a material, and it's pushing its boundaries.
So this work is unmistakably Martin Khosla.
Yeah.
So he's going larger and larger in size. What's going on with this work?
So we had shown our smaller sized work at India Art Fair, and I guess he's just kind of exploring this practice. We've done a solo show with him in 2019, where I think he started. Initially he used to work with materials from construction sites, and now he's kind of working more with the techniques that would be used in building houses and all of these different industrial techniques, and he's bringing them in a micro state. Yeah.
So very, very recognizable domestic objects, chairs and beds and tables.
He's kind of using these very known things and making these hyper realities or like imagined realities, and just exploring that. This is a work by Ellen Tallur, who's an artist based both in Karnataka and Korea. He's somebody that's extremely interested in the way that objects, how human beings relate to objects, and trying to understand the contemporary life, especially of India and Indians. He's using art and objects of classical India, and he's using them to represent the contemporary setting.
Before we move to the first floor and see the other galleries, you've got this little pop-up by Gunjan Gupta. So how did you think about it? What's going on here?
Yeah, so I think one of the beautiful things about this project is all the participants are friends and they've known each other for years and worked together for years. So what we're sitting on right now is called the Alubury Couch. It looks like hard potatoes. I assure you it is not. It is incredibly comfortable. But it looks like alu-shaped objects in these sacks that are very iconic to the Indian streets, full of potatoes or rice or whatever. But this is a very recognizable object. And a lot of Gunjan's work is sort of centered around everyday Indian objects and what they mean in all of our lives. If you turn around, is this wonderful chair, which again is probably one of her most signature objects, and this specifically was just acquired by M+ in Hong Kong, which is a really big deal for India to have Indian designers starting to be collected internationally.